to go. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody across the globe who's joining us today. So my name's Tim Lehnen. I'm the CTO of the Drupal Association, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. Our topic is Introducing Drupal 9, Everything That Marketers Need to Know. We're joined today by Dries Buytaert, the founder of Drupal, Lynne Capozzi, the CMO of Acquia, and Acquia's marketing leaders, Eric Williamson, Ryan Picchini, and Matt Wetmore. So a couple housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please use the Q&A tab to put in a request, and the team in the background here will assist you with that. And as I said before the webinar began, please feel free to use the Q&A feature in the Zoom toolbar to submit any questions, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation. So please understand that we have quite a few questions for these sorts of webinars. We usually don't get through all of them, so we'll do our best to group similar questions together and try and get the main ideas heard. I do see that my audio is perhaps sounding a little bit low, so I'll try and see if we can boost that a little bit. When this presentation is complete, the slides and the recording are going to be posted to acquia.com and also sent to everybody via email within the next few days. So with that said, let's get started. So I mentioned our speakers before. Again, I'm the moderator. We'll have Dries and Lynne walking us through a presentation about Drupal 9. And then joining for the panel portion, Eric, Ryan, and Matt will help address all your questions about Drupal in a marketing context. Our agenda today is Dries will talk about what Drupal is, what its space is within the marketing world. Lynne will talk to us about the current trends in the market that impact a CMO. Dries will then talk specifically about some of the tools and features of Drupal 9 that will help marketers. And then we'll move into the Q&A portion. With that, I want to hand it over to Dries to get us started.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tim, and welcome everybody. I am Dries. As Tim mentioned, I started the Drupal project and have been working on Drupal for about 20 years, which is a long time by every measure. The big news, of course, is that Drupal 9 was recently released just a couple of weeks ago, and it's something that we worked on for 4.5 years, so there's a lot to cover. If you're new to Drupal and if you're wondering what Drupal is, if you go to the next slide, and then the slide after. Drupal is essentially software, open source software that is used by individuals and organizations to build digital experiences. And those come in a lot of shapes. That could be marketing websites, that could be blogs, that could be e-commerce websites. You see some other options here on the screen, but it's essentially an open source platform, very flexible, that can be used for many different kinds of websites. As I mentioned, I started the project. I've been working on this for 20 years, and in those 20 years, Drupal has grown to be one of the largest open source projects in the world, and probably the largest enterprise content management system in the world. You can see Drupal is used by like 1 out of 30 websites around the world, and there's a very active community of participants, contributors. Just in the last year, we had over 10,000 people contribute code to Drupal. Obviously, there's many other ways people contribute, like organizing events and writing documentation and providing support. And all of that is done by a very engaged community. Other than Drupal core, which is a base platform, we have a lot of modules or plugins or extensions. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but you can see we have about 45,000 extensions. I would say 13 years ago, I also started a company. Company is called Acquia. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Acquia, but the company was born out of Drupal, and our goal and our vision and our mission has been to provide additional technology and services around Drupal to help both IT people, but also marketing people be successful with Drupal. We'll touch upon some of our products later, but the company has grown quite a bit. We're around 1,000 employees to give you a sense of the size, and we're a global company with customers all around the world, as well as offices all around the world. We have, I think, 15 or so offices. And we help a lot of larger customers, and we have customers in every industry. You can see some of them on the screen, goes from media to higher education, to government, to technology companies. So yeah, really cover the whole spectrum. Everyone that needs a website or a digital experience and that's doing something ambitious should take a look at Drupal and Acquia.
Awesome. With that, we will ask Lynne to step forward and talk a little bit about some of the trends currently impacting a CMO in 2020.
Thanks, Tim. Welcome, everyone. So I did want to talk a little bit about kind of what trends are happening right now that are impacting myself and other CMOs, because I think actually Drupal 9 is a really nice fit for some of the challenges that we have going on right now. So, if I was to try to sum it up in one word about what's going on right now, I'd say it's probably the word is more. So we're all dealing with, as marketers, we're dealing with more channels. We need to generate more leads. We need more awareness. We need to do more brand building. So all of that together, I think, is more. But we don't have as more time and resource. So I've been turning lately. Actually, McKinsey has done a great job during this pandemic of having a lot of great study information. And so one of the things that they discovered was that 70% of execs told them that they're more likely to accelerate the pace of the digital transformation right now. So what they used to have in their 1 to 3 year plan, they're moving up to do in their plan for this year even. So in terms of the next word to think about, instead of just more, it's speed and digital transformation, because it's definitely happening quickly. McKinsey also, by the way, has a really nice study. If you're looking to try to fuel your customer experience and why do you need to spend more time and effort and maybe even budget around building out your customer experience, they have a great study that talks about from the 2007-2009 financial crisis that happened, those brands and organizations that focused on building their customer experience paid off for them financially in those organizations. So we know, for instance, that now is the right time for all of us to be focused on building a better customer experience. And we know that based on trends that brand loyalty, awareness, and the whole customer experience right now are more important than ever. And consumers are telling us that, and customers are telling us that, if you invest in the customer experience and if you're able to provide the great content and you'd be able to personalize and engage with those customers, that it really will pay off, and consumers are willing to share their information if they're seeing some value that's coming from it. So the words now are all around speed and availability, right? So speed and availability of content, this is a whole new norm. Everyone is content binging. The traffic for our site has gone up over 20% since mid-March timeframe. Everyone is content binging, not just Netflix, but everyone's looking at content, everyone's researching small pieces of content, larger pieces of content, ebooks, for instance. And so video, now is the time where people are really looking for content, and you need to make sure that we're providing a way to have that content available. And the content needs to be accessible on all channels. So, what used to be a new channel being introduced took a year or so, now it's like within a couple of months. And so being able to provide content and the right content and making it accessible on all the different channels for your customers and prospects is super important. And that's something actually that Drupal 9 is very good at, which we'll talk about a little bit more. On the next slide. So what else is important to CMOs? What are the trends? Scale and governance to accommodate growth. I just said myself even that our site traffic has been huge. So as with all this content binging, you need to find ways to be able to scale your site and governance. I care about governance because for me, it's all about what does it mean for the brand so that I don't have digital sprawl happening all over the place. And so to make sure that your site is able to scale and have governance and enterprise security and support all around it. So it's super important. And I think it's something that all CMOs are looking to accomplish. All right, so how does Drupal 9 help marketers? Let's talk about a couple of different ways. So historically, as a CMO, I've done this many times, is to have to choose for a CMS. And historically, you've kind of had the choice of, I put them in 3 different categories. you can choose between an expensive one. They tend to be the proprietary ones. It could be an Adobe, for instance, or a Sitecore solution, traditional CMS tools. So, you know, expensive in that category. Obviously, there's benefits, pros and cons of all of these. In the limited category, it's more like a consumer site building tool. So it's a lower end, quick way to build a site, but doesn't have governance, doesn't have security, doesn't scale. We really worry about if I start a site like that on a smaller type of a consumer product, how do I grow it? And how does it meet my brand requirements? The third category area is if you want to do it yourself. So basic hosting and custom development, something that you would do yourself. So, you know, there's drawbacks of each of these, right? In the expensive or pink circle, if you will, traditional CMS tools, you know, the drawbacks are ease of use, because typically they're hard to use, time to market, being able to do it quickly, and tend to be expensive. On the consumer type site building tools, the drawbacks are you don't have the enterprise type of functionality, it's not scalable, and you don't have the governance, which I think is critical and required. On the custom side, you have the drawbacks would be, you know, you get a lot of kind of good knowledge within the team, but it's costly, it's hard to implement, it may take a long time to do updates. So, you know, time to market, I think, is really critical there. So now we have a great choice with Drupal 9. And I know that the Drupal community spent a lot of time thinking about how do we make Drupal a better product for marketers. And I see it in terms of what's coming out in the product. So that's why I'm really excited about Drupal 9, because it has great benefits across the board for me as a marketer and as a CMO. So it has the enterprise functionality. I just talked about security, scalability, the governance that I need. The benefits for me, ease of use, because the easier the product is to use, the more I can have people spend time doing marketing, other things, and building other content. So ease of use, time to market, super important, and obviously cost efficient. And of course, the benefits always of Drupal, you get exactly what you want, super customizable, very connected. So for me, I'm thinking about it as kind of the best of all three of these types of CMS type products. And I'm really excited about what Drupal 9 provides for marketers. So why don't we go into a little bit more detail and look at some specifics.
Awesome. Go to the next slide. So here's just some high level, you know, details about what's so great about Drupal in general and Drupal 9 specifically. But like, as I mentioned, Drupal is 20 or so years old. And what that means is like we've done a lot of iterating and refining. And a good example of that is the SEO features, where we are constantly tweaking sort of the generated HTML to make sure that you rank high in search engines. Multilingual is a key benefit. I'm from Belgium, which we have 3 official languages in Belgium. And so Drupal in many ways was born multilingual and is a leader in multilingual websites. You know, and as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we're a very large community, global community with websites in many different countries. And I believe the Drupal UI is actually translated in over 100 languages as well. So just a good anecdote for the multilingual capabilities. I mentioned all the modules we have, the 45,000 modules or plugins or extensions, and that's really valuable for marketing because it allows you to experiment really quickly. Like a lot of these modules are integrations with different marketing technologies, social media technologies, you name it, and you can download them, you can install them and sort of assemble a website. You know, using these modules, it allows you to very quickly try new things, experiment with the latest and the greatest technologies. And then, of course, as Lynne mentioned, because Drupal is open source, you can make changes to it. And so if there's something that you want to do that you can't do with an existing module, you can obviously, you know, build your own module, which is great too. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about some of these specifics. If you go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about ease of use first, but the last few years, we've spent a lot of time and effort improving the authoring experience and making that a lot easier. And it's kind of hard to tell from a screenshot, to be quite honest, but everything is WYSIWYG. And so you can drag and drop, and you don't have to know HTML to create pages or to, you know, enter content into Drupal, and we'll try to kind of visualize that here. We also have a brand new layout builder. So this allows you to do things like create landing pages, but also template content types, like maybe recipes, like you see here. And there's some layouts that you can choose from that come sort of out of the box with Drupal. You see that here on the screen. And then you can drag in different page elements, like an image or things like that, into the different layout sections. And then if you want to make a completely unique layout or custom layout, you can do that too. So you're not limited to the layouts that we ship with. So pretty powerful tool. We also have a completely new media management solution. It's basically what we call the media library, what you see here, which is literally a library of all your assets, images, videos, all are sort of combined in one repository, and then you can use and reuse them across multiple posts. So like an image of a pie, if you have multiple articles about pies, you can use the same image very easily across all of the different articles, as an example. So it's pretty powerful. It's very easy. Also, drag and drop, you just upload images into Drupal and you can start using them. Here's a quick example of a multilingual Drupal site. I'm actually not sure what language that is. It looks Spanish, yeah. That's a fairly easy language, of course, to translate, but we do much more complex languages. We can do left to right, but also right to left, as an example. So much more drastic change to the page. And we do a lot of things around multilingual. We have tools to, sort of manage a translation workflow and have approval steps along the way. But we also have integrations, for example, with translation memories, they're called. So think of those as databases with pre-translated words and sentences and even paragraphs. And it allows you to really quickly translate a website to multiple languages. So if you're a marketer and you want to market into multiple languages, there's some things that Drupal does that allow you to, speed up that process. And then, Acquia also has a product called Cohesion. It's basically an extension of Drupal, and it kind of supercharges, if you will, some of Drupal's low code, no code, site building and design tools. So it allows you to design a page or design page components that are reusable and to lay them out on a page. And so you can see here an example of that where we, very quickly adjust some page elements, like changing the size of some text and changing the color of some text. And, here we just switching to a different font. And so all of that can be done from a UI. So you don't need a developer to help you. So yeah, it's pretty powerful. If you want to try it out, it comes with all Acquia Cloud subscriptions. So if you're a customer, you should ask or talk to your salesperson about how to get your hands on, sorry, I'm getting a call here. Get your hands on Cohesion. All right. Next is flexibility. So let's talk a little bit about flexibility in Drupal. So, obviously, if you think about where the world is going, I would say that it's no longer enough for an organization to just have a website. There's an explosion of different channels, and you see some of the channels here, like chats or mobile applications and voice assistants, kiosks. There's many others, to be quite honest. And what's important is that you deliver sort of an experience to your customer that embraces all of these different channels. And something that Drupal does really well. So out of the box, Drupal 9 ships with a variety of different web services. I won't, make it too technical, but JSON API, REST APIs, and then we also have things like GraphQL that allows you to front-end Drupal with different technologies. Like, for example, JavaScript frameworks, mobile application development tools and the likes. And so today, quite a few of our customers and Drupal users in general, use Drupal to power those kinds of experiences. Like you see on the screen on the left, you see digital kiosks in New York, in the subway stations in New York. Drupal is actually, pushing information to, TVs, if you will, in the stations that will tell people when the next train is coming. So it's a pretty cool application where they have some, sensors on the trains, and then they communicate with Drupal, and Drupal translates that into, the next train is in 2 minutes kind of stuff, and then pushes it out to the right TV in the right station. The second screenshot real quick is, I believe this is Princess Cruises, which is basically a cruise line. And you have these little terminals in your cabins and around the ship where you can have personalized, messages like happy anniversary. You can have that message in your cabin. And from there, you can also order food and all of that kind of stuff, also powered by Drupal. And then on the right, you actually see a screenshot of a Tesla. And so I don't know if you know, but Tesla powers part of its, some of the Tesla apps are actually Drupal powered in the car. So that's pretty cool. And so long story short, Drupal is great for building websites, but a lot of the innovation that we've done, a lot of that innovation is part of Drupal 9, really sets us up well for the future, future of many channels and multiple devices, and building great digital experiences. Couple of other quick things. Workspaces is new feature in Drupal 9. Basically allows you to create multiple versions of your websites and have them sort of in preview mode. And then sort of like with one click of the button, you can publish one version of your site to production. So if you go back for 1 second, sorry, Tim. Like you can, for example, create two versions like the Saints win the Super Bowl or the Colts, and you can build it all out ahead of time, not just the content, but also the images and even menu items. Like you can make entire sections of your site if you wanted to. And then when you're ready to publish one or the other, you just hit publish and there you go. That's actually tied with some advancements in our workflow capability in Drupal. So in Drupal, you can basically say, all right, this new piece of content, like I'm able to create it as a draft, but then somebody else needs to review it. Maybe somebody else needs to add the images. And so you can create these workflows or pipelines with approval steps and maybe even legal sign-off, depending on your use case. And you can build, sort of arbitrary workflows that are tailored to your needs and your organization. It's pretty cool. Or you can keep it really simple too. Just hit publish, no workflows. So whatever you want, Drupal will support it. So mentioned already, but Drupal 9 is here today. And it's actually very easy to migrate from Drupal 8. We spend a lot of time and effort making sure that the upgrade path was very easy. Previously, upgrade paths have been hard, admittedly. So from 7 to 8, that's hard, but from 8 to 9 will be very easy. And it's easy because we really reimagined how we develop Drupal, how we maintain backwards compatibility, and how we do release management. So a pretty dramatic shift. And so what that means is if you are still on 7, as an example, you have one hard upgrade ahead of you. But then, from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11, all of these should be very easy upgrades. For example, I already upgraded my own site. It's an easy site, simple site, but it literally took me, 10 or 15 minutes to upgrade my site from 8 to 9. And I know from talking to other people that it was very easy for them as well.
Yeah, anecdotally, on the launch day of Drupal 9, we had a huge amount of folks in the community from around the world who were not only celebrating the release, as we've done in years past for new versions of Drupal, but were doing their updates on the day the release came out because things were already ready to go. It was really powerful to see. Thank you, Dries. So with that, we're going to move into the Q&A portion of this conversation. So I'm going to stop sharing slides so you can see the faces of our panelists. Again, we've collected questions from the Q&A feature of Zoom. If you haven't had a chance, it's that button in the Zoom toolbar. We also had a lot of questions collected during the registration process. So we will likely not be able to answer all of them, but we'll do our best to hit the highlights and combine similar questions and try and get you the answers that you need. All right, so with that, let's dive in here. And you know, our first question, which came in prior to the webinar beginning, was really, I think this is probably for you, Dries, and Lynne, maybe you can speak to this as well. How do you predict organizations will use Drupal 9, or perhaps more specifically, how might that change compared to how they've used a previous CMS or earlier versions of Drupal?
Yeah, well, so the two big things for me, and I've kind of talked about them already, is I think one, Drupal 9 is a lot easier to use than Drupal 8, especially for less technical people. And so I do expect more marketers to use Drupal 9, which I'm excited about. It's been a real focus for us, and I hope that plays out. And the second prediction, I guess, of how organizations will use Drupal 9 is leveraging the headless capabilities. I definitely see more and more organizations adding additional channels. You know, I think a lot of companies, as I mentioned, they realize that just having a website, you know, it's not bad, but it's often not enough. It's not enough to win with the best experience. And so adding a chat bot or adding a voice assistant as, you know, as optional channels for users, customers to use is pretty interesting. And yeah, as mentioned, Drupal is really good at that. It allows content to be reused and across these channels. And I expect more organizations to start taking advantage of that.
Awesome. Lynne, do you have any thoughts to add?
Well, I think Dries said it well. I think the other thing that we're going to see is, you know, we're really be able to see marketers really build up their content, and so have much more content than ever before. And it's going to be easier access to content, creating content, less developer need. So I think it's going to be great in terms of speed and velocity for the marketers across the board.
Awesome. That's an idea I want to come back to because we have a few questions about it. But before we go there, Eric, can you speak as someone who works with kind of the overall website content strategy for a variety of sites about how Drupal 9 will impact that strategy and that strategy for other organizations?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think the biggest thing from a marketer standpoint in the marketing department, if I think about the editorial team that rolls up underneath me, the ease of use is probably one of the biggest new features. You know, having worked with multiple CMSs in my career, I do think that this is a huge step forward in terms of enabling marketers and your content team, as Lynne was talking about earlier. I also think when we're talking about a digital experience, it's no longer, while your website may be the biggest you know, asset in your ecosystem. I think Dries had a slide earlier that was showing that it's basically an expectation from a customer experience standpoint that this is on your device, this is something you see in the subway or on your cruise. So the headless piece of this and the ability to unlock that content beyond your site and reuse it in so many multiple places, I think that has a huge impact on your content strategy. If you think about that content as more than just your site and unlocking it beyond that site. So to your content strategy question, I think the headless piece is probably the biggest impact.
Awesome. And actually, as a related question to that, Ryan, I'm going to skip ahead to you. There's a question here about how a CMS like Drupal fits into the MarTech stack as a whole and the other tools that marketers out there might be used to as part of their toolkit in a modern digital marketing world. So could you talk about how that evolves in the context of Drupal 9?
Yeah, so I think obviously the first place digital content was deployed was on the web channel, but any good digital experience is going to combine content and data. So those two foundational parts of a digital experience continue to evolve. I think that both Dries and Eric and Lynne have kind of highlighted the desire to have content across specific channels. I think the other part is, especially in the new environment, that content is going to be the foundation of the whole buyer's journey, because more and more organizations are saying, yes, we need to give customers the option to do the full evaluation, comparison, purchase, and service online. And organizations need to have the content that's going to live at each stage in that buying cycle. So with that, the CMS is going to become more and more valuable, but it's going to need to connect to other parts of the ecosystem. It's going to need to connect to Commerce Engine. It's going to need to connect to CRM systems. It's going to need to connect to chatbots, which are going to play a role post a customer being acquired. So I think it becomes more and more critical as content gets deployed on multiple channels and is going to be deployed across each phase in the buyer's journey. And so I think it has a really unique place in the future of what digital experiences are going to look like.
Just to piggyback on that really quickly from a marketer's perspective, the other piece of this, when you're talking about your marketing stack, all of us have 5, 6, 10 different things already in your marketing stack, and they have different contract times. So the ability for Drupal to integrate in with the vast majority of those already is a huge plus, I think, from a Drupal standpoint versus other maybe proprietary CMSs. So that's just it's everybody's digital experience solution. The stack that you choose is a little bit unique to you. So I think that's a huge plus for Drupal, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Tim, I might add one more thing there, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
Which is this idea that most marketers kind of have understood for a long time, and I think IT leaders are, they recognize the value of it as well more and more today, which is the ability to pivot. And that means not just ability to pivot to new channels like we've talked about, but to ability to pivot to new systems that might be better suited for their needs. So maybe they need a different type of CRM. Maybe they need a new web analytics platform that has additional capabilities. And the connectivity of Drupal 9 to all those different systems, like Eric said, and having that ability to pivot is one of the things that we hear over and over again with 8 and even more so with 9 that's critical, is that connectivity to whatever is next within the MarTech stack.
That's actually a great transition to the next question we have here. And so this returns to this concept of ease of use. So you've all been talking about how the increased ease of use of Drupal 9 is a critical component, and that ability to be agile and flexible and pivot quickly, but also the importance about integrating with all sorts of stacks and being able to publish to all sorts of channels. So that's going to involve some form of a partnership between the marketers and the IT teams within these organizations. So let's start with Lynne, and then maybe Matt can chime in as well. So how would you as a CMO, or how would a director of product or marketing talk to your engineering and IT departments about evaluating Drupal in the context of these capabilities that you're saying are the important kind of next generation?
Well, I think ease of use is always going to be important, because as we're talking to IT or as we're talking to the developers, the more we can put the control in the hands of the marketer, the better, because then we stay closer to it. We can update our content quicker. So I think the sell to IT is ease of use impacts everyone, and it would be less developer need, less developer use, and more marketer type use. So I think it's putting more in the hands of the marketer. I don't know what Matt thinks about that.
Yeah, and I think from a technical standpoint, like our developers would be rather spending a lot of our time on kind of those more complex tasks. So really integrating Drupal with other systems, integrating the site, just spending a lot more time on high value add activities. instead of having to help adding content or modifying the site or doing some other activities, which can, yeah, be kind of repetitive at times. So anything we can do to keep our people productive in other ways is good.
Awesome. So a follow-up question for you, Matt, and then I'm gonna jump from some of our pre-registration questions to our live Q&A. And thank you for your patience again, everyone. We do have tons of questions, so we're gonna do our best here. But Matt, the question for you is, what's going on with all those integrations that either maybe custom ones that you've built or all the community provided ones? What's happening to all of those as part of the Drupal 9 launch? And can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So the community's been doing a great job at making sure all the modules are updated and ready for Drupal 9. I think I looked at some of the stats yesterday, and I think like 98% of the top 100 modules are ready. And then the 85% of the top 200 are ready. So everything's kind of been upgraded and good to go. A lot of modules are back supporting some 8.9 and some Drupal 9. So they kind of fit into both ways. If you go to dev.acquia, we have a deprecation status page, which kind of gives you a good status of where modules are at and what can be upgraded. But yeah, the biggest piece of that is if you do have any custom stuff that's built, it does make it a little bit longer to get upgraded. We're doing some of this evaluation now for like Acquia.com, but it's definitely doable.
Yeah, and there's some tools I would add to that the community has built even to support custom module migrations, things that can automatically help upgrade custom modules that use things that were deprecated in Drupal 8. So we won't dive into the deep technical details, but I think it's an important factor to know, both for your IT teams, if you're on this call to support a marketing organization, or if you're in a marketing organization going to talk to your IT teams, that a lot of the module ecosystem is ready and that there are tools even for your custom work to get it ready for Drupal 9. Let's see. So Eric, let me jump back to a question for you. And then maybe this will also have some follow-up on the engineering side of things, but can you talk about how working with Drupal actually saves time? How it allows you to focus maybe on more innovative projects and streamline the day-to-day, create kind of economy of effort for your teams?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, it's become a bit of a theme of this, but especially with Drupal 9 and Layout Builder and a lot of the things that make it so much easier and give power back to the teams. So just organizationally, if I think about our marketing department, we have an editorial team, we've got a demand gen team. You're able to distribute a lot of these tasks that normally you would have had to centralize all through the web ops team, which is usually a small but very strong team. But if you have to bottleneck everything through one team, you clearly cannot move that fast as a marketing organization. So just the ability for us to be able to distribute those tasks out across almost the whole marketing department appropriately, that speeds up just the ability for us to get new content out to market, to get new webinars into our quarterly schedule, etc. So just the ease of use alone is huge for us.
And could you maybe speak, is there a customer example that kind of tells that story?
We think, and anybody else on the call, please jump in. I know that, in the past, one of the good examples, this is more of a personalization example, but it also shows the ease of use. Wendy's, and if you're familiar with anything about fast casual as far as food, they usually have a quarterly schedule in terms of their promotion schedule. It used to take them something along the lines of 60 to 70 days to do any major updates to their homepage to change out the new quarterly promotion. When they switched to using Drupal, and this was also with Lyft, but switched to using Drupal, they were able to bring that down to 8 days, which is a huge, for a company as big as Wendy's, is a huge, obviously, cost saving, time saving for them.
Awesome. So in our live Q&A, we have a lot of questions that have to do with sort of specific features, Dries, that you spoke to in your conversation about the ease of use features in Drupal 9 and some of the new features that that came together. So I'd like to try and hit a couple of these together. So first of all, let's talk about the media library a little bit. There's a few questions here. This question from Danielle asks, does the media library itself provide functionality around restricting uploads and where? Does it provide structure or organization tools? I suppose, could you speak to whether it is integrated with Drupal's permissioning system and these kinds of management tools?
Yeah. The answer to the question is yes. So basically, when you enable the media module, it will sort of add a number of permissions that you can configure. And the way that the permission system works is that you can define different roles and then assign permissions to the role and assign roles to users. So what I mean by that is that you could say, you could create a role, content creators or photographers or, any kind of role. And then you can specify in Drupal, and this is out of the box, what that role can do. So there will be a checkbox, and I don't know the exact language, but it's probably going to be something like upload images to the media library. And you can either enable or disable that. And that way you can control who has access to the media library. It's probably going to be a number of permissions, adding, deleting, updating, all of these things can be configured as it relates to the media library.
Awesome. I'm going to try and go through a few more of these feature-related questions, Dries, if you don't mind. So another one is just more about the languages, the multilingual capabilities of Drupal, which have always been one of its strong suits. Could you just speak a little bit more to the nuts and bolts of how it works if you're a user who's trying to maybe build out a multilingual section on your site?
Yeah, well, there's whole books written on multilingual and presentations you can watch online that are long, but there's sort of two pieces to it. One is the UI of Drupal itself, and basically, let's say you're a Spanish organization and you want your editors to have a Spanish authoring experience. You basically load one of the language or translation packs, if you will, into Drupal, and it will translate all of the UI elements like explanations and buttons, all these things. Second piece is how do you make multilingual content itself, right? And so when you define content types in Drupal, like an example could be a press release or something, or a product, you can actually specify for each of the fields or parts of your content type, whether it's translatable. So some things maybe aren't translatable. Maybe an image is not translatable, or maybe it is translatable if there's text in the image. But you can specify all of that at the field level. And then there is a UI where you can add multiple translations, and you can control who can translate what and what language. And then separately, there's some capability to do what we call language negotiation, because Drupal needs to decide what translation to show to what user. And there's different options for that as well. You can do it based on, the user making an explicit choice, clicking a button or selecting a checkbox. But you could also do much more advanced language negotiation systems. You could, if you wanted to, based on IP address or a browser setting or other stuff. So that's really high level, obviously, but hopefully gives you a flavor of what's possible. We have really good presentations about the multilingual system. You can easily find them online if you want to spend some more time on them.
Okay, one more question for you, Dries, and I want to switch to some of our other panelists again. But just quickly to clarify, Dave asks, are those publishing workflows that you described in the slides part of out-of-the-box Drupal, or were those extra integrations, and are they available in 8?
So they're out of the box in Drupal 9, and they were in some versions of Drupal 8. So in later versions of Drupal 8, forgot the exact version, but I think they became available think in 8.4 or 8.5 or something. I could be wrong on that, but it's a module. I don't believe it's enabled by default. So what that means is it ships with Drupal. You don't have to download anything extra, but you may have to enable and configure it after you have upgraded to Drupal 9 or are on a recent version of Drupal 8.
Okay, great. So I want to address a question that's come up in a few different forms, both in the pre-webinar questions and in our live webinar. And that's the question of the upgrade from 7 to 9 and the process of getting from that site. So, so let me ask Matt maybe to speak to this a little bit. And this question's been asked in a few different ways. So one, it's hard. How hard is it really? Do you go straight from 7 to 9 without going through 8 at this point? How do you approach changing tools? Like if you were switching from one e-commerce suite that was popular in 7 to Drupal Commerce in 9? And are there any tools that help make this process easier?
Yeah, so planning to migrate is pretty much if you're going from 7 to 9. So the migration effort's pretty much the same as if you were to go from 7 to 8, because underlying technologies and concepts between 8 and 9 are pretty much the same. And then for tools, we have Acquia is producing the Acquia Migrate Accelerator, which will help go from 7 to 9. That's coming hopefully in the fall, I believe. So yeah, but I think overall, like you can just go from 7 to 9. It shouldn't be too bad. But if you're going from 8 to 9, that's even easier. I know we've been testing that out ourselves and it's been going pretty smoothly. Again, it all depends on what modules you have. As Dries said, his went pretty quick, but some go a little bit longer. So you'll have to see what's available when you do your own audit.
Right. So it'll depend a lot on the specific ecosystem and modules that a site uses, but in general should be relatively easy. Would someone talk about this Acquia migration tool a little bit? I don't know if everyone would have the details about what might be coming there. I don't know if Ryan or...
I can give a quick summary if that's helpful for the migration tool, yeah. So yeah, it's basically a tool that will help you accelerate your migration from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9. And there's a couple of pieces to this, right? So you have to migrate your content or your data. And that's really what the tool is all about. It will do a mapping of 7 to 9. But actually Cohesion is also a part of it, because you also, if you go from 7 to 9 or 7 to 8, you have to implement your theme or your look and feel again because of the many API changes to the theme system. And Cohesion can really help accelerate that part as well. So we're bundling a lot of these things together in a package that is optimized to, reduce the cost and effort to migrate from 7 to 9. And it's currently in alpha/beta. We're testing it internally. And as Matt mentioned, our goal is to have it available for Acquia customers in the fall.
Awesome. Thank you, Dries.
Tim, do you mind if I add one thing there?
Sure.
So the other, obviously, we've kind of covered folks who are on Drupal. Acquia also does have a solution and there's things that are in the community for folks who are on alternative platforms. If they're on a WordPress or Adobe or whatever else they may be on, there is a set of technologies that will make that transition easy as well. So, I don't know the exact number, but at least in the enterprise space, the vast majority of our customers are transitioning from another platform. Obviously, there are a lot of customers who are coming from Drupal as well, but there is purpose-built technology if you're on another platform to transition to Drupal 9 really effectively. And some of the things that Dries mentioned will go into that different technology bucket that we offer, like Cohesion, but it will be a slightly different offering given that you're not on Drupal today.
Right, that's a really good point. And speaking as someone who's in the kind of community space, I do want to echo that. There are tools. There's a core migration module basically that helps build a custom migration that associates your content of this type with from some old system with the new type in Drupal 9 and a variety of contributed tools. And that's a really good thing to keep in mind. Eric, I'd like to switch to you again for a little bit. There's a couple questions here about marketing automation and some specific tools and personalization. So if you could speak first, I'll ask this question first and then do a follow-up. So could you just speak in general first about marketing automation in Drupal and personalization in Drupal?
Sure. So I think, and it really depends on where your organization is in your own digital transformation or how sort of large and robust your marketing strategy is. But my guess would be that the bulk of the audience already is doing some form of marketing automation. So, if you're a smaller company, you're using Constant Contact or some smaller marketing automation platform. If you're a large company, you're using Marketo or something. So I think what we talked about earlier is probably the biggest plus for Drupal would be that it integrates with the vast majority of existing technologies out there. So if you were to Ryan's just previous point, switch from some other CMS platform to Drupal, you can be rest assured that it's going to integrate with the marketing automation platform you have. So that's a good part. If you think about, we use our own tool, so Modic, which would be something that is, built specifically for Drupal in this particular case, or to integrate with it. Same thing for Lift in terms of our personalization tool. So I think the flexibility there is a value to any organization, whether you're, small, medium, or large. How you think about that actually loops back to a little bit of your question previously about content strategy. So I think when you're thinking about marketing automation, the ability to unlock the content, from just your site and be able to use that in your marketing automation and as part of your content strategy for that touch is probably the second biggest benefit that I would mention in terms of Drupal and marketing automation.
Gotcha. And the specific follow-up question was in fact about Modic and Lift. Do Modic and Lift, are their capabilities integrated with some of the newer capabilities coming online in Drupal, like the layout builder and workspaces stuff? Do they play together well?
I believe so. I'll defer a little bit to Ryan on this from the product organization, but my understanding is that yes, they do.
Yeah, and answer that question a bit more broadly, Tim. So Lift, Modic, Acquia Cloud, kind of our full suite of products are Drupal 9 ready today. Yes.
Okay, great. Let's see here. There's a number of other questions and we don't have too much time left. I'm going to try and see if we can focus on a few of the important ones. One of these questions is about the media functionality in general. This might be something that Ryan, again, you could answer, or possibly Matt. So when it comes to digital asset management, what's the role of Drupal's now built-in media library feature that just ships with Drupal core versus extended digital asset management tools like whatever asset management is available through Acquia or other integrations that people might do?
I can take a first crack at it if you'd like.
Sure.
So the way I think about the difference is, Drupal's media library is kind of like a very lightweight digital asset management versus, you have dedicated DAMs and they're built just to do that. And they have a lot of depth in functionality that's not available in Drupal's. There's many examples, but for example, just to give two quick ones at the top of my head, one is they can specialize in managing very large video assets, as an example, with very complex video-specific workflows, versioning, these kinds of things. But another common use case is digital rights management, as an example. So we can do things like we're buying an image from somewhere, and we have a license to use it for 2 months. And Drupal doesn't really do any of that, to be honest. And so what a DAM can do is it will track where the image is used, and then after 2 months it can help you expire the image so it's no longer used. in your organization. And then I would say maybe a third example is the integration with other tools. Like a lot of DAMs have deep integration with Adobe's Creative Studio, and they tap into all sorts of design workflows. So these are just some examples. So if you want to be more serious about digital asset management and integrating with other workflows, or managing large amounts of data, or having sophisticated license policies around some of your content, I would look at integrating. And the great news is that these tools integrate well with Drupal. Like Drupal has the right APIs, if you will, so that it can integrate, and some of these images can actually end up in the media library in Drupal, but they're in the back, under the hood, if you will, they're managed in a DAM. So.
Awesome. I'm going to try and answer one or maybe two questions, and then we'll have to go to a conclusion. I know there are still many unanswered questions, so we'll work with the webinar team here who helped put this together to see if perhaps we could provide a follow-up FAQ or something that could answer some of these remaining questions. So thank you everyone for your patience. But for a couple quick final questions, I'll do one that's feature specific, and then two more that I think probably on everyone's mind. So the feature specific one is just what's the difference between Cohesion versus Layout Builder from kind of a practical perspective? And if there's an overlap, is one of them like redundant and phased out in phase of the other, or do they build on top of each other? And I suppose, Dries, that may be a question for you again.
Sure, yeah. So the short, well, there's a couple of questions, but the short version is that Cohesion does a lot more, right? So the Layout Builder is really about creating layouts and putting blocks, existing content in those layouts. But Cohesion also does things like, more design elements, like, and as you saw it in the screenshot, right? Like you could change colors and fonts and sizes. And so these are capabilities not available in the Layout Builder. And then Cohesion does some advanced things, like you can create components and then reuse those components across websites and stuff like that. So there's a long list, too many things actually to mention on this call of things that Cohesion does that are not part of the Layout Builder. There is some overlap, which is creating the layouts. That is definitely overlapping functionality. And so it's something that we're thinking about. So what do we do about it? And it would make a lot of sense to bring these two together. And specifically, I would say it probably makes the most sense for Cohesion to integrate with Drupal's Layout Builder. It's actually not something we're currently working on, in full transparency. Like, since we launched Cohesion, it's actually been overwhelmingly successful. It's been adopted very rapidly, and our teams have been very busy, to be quite honest, just keeping up with scaling Cohesion and adding features that our customers are asking for. And so we would like to get to that integration at some point, but unfortunately fortunately and unfortunately, we've not been able to prioritize that work just yet.
Thank you, Dries. Okay, I'm going to do these last two, and then we'll wrap up here. We may go a minute or two over, so I beg your patience. But firstly, the question, and I think I'll answer this myself. What's the current end of life date for Drupal 7? So on Drupal.org, you could find some information about this. Drupal 7's official end of life date for community-driven support from the open source community is November of 2021. However, extended support is going to be available from a number of different vendors, including Acquia, so that you could continue through 2024 if you needed the extra time. So there is extended support available for Drupal 7, although we certainly encourage you to use any of that extra time to make that transition happen. Now is really the time to be thinking about the upgrade. And then the last question is, how do you define easy upgrade? What does that actually mean when we said 8 to 9 is an easy upgrade? Let's see, Dries, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, easy means, less than an hour in my mind. I would measure success based on time. And so the thing about Drupal 9 is that it's actually almost identical to Drupal 8.9, I think it is, right? The latest version. The only thing we've done is we dropped some APIs that are deprecated, is what we call it. And so what you have to do is you need to make sure that your custom code or code in other modules no longer use deprecated APIs. And we actually, for some of these APIs, we've given, we've declared them deprecated for like 3 years. And so that means that people had 3 years to update their modules, and a lot of people have. So the result is that a lot of modules are ready for Drupal 9. And then as Tim mentioned earlier, there is some automation that we have to automatically upgrade a lot of modules. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of rambling, I guess, but it's not completely automatic in that you do have to check for deprecated code usage, but other than that, it's a lot easier.
I would say if you could think about it this way, if you're a user on Drupal 8 and you ever did an upgrade from, say, like 8.4 to 8.5 because you wanted a new feature that came out in 8.5, that process of going from 8.4 to 8.5 is almost identical to the process of going from 8.9 to 9.0. It's not significantly harder than just the regular feature releases, which is really quite amazing. And I think you'll find more resources on Drupal.org. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and in fact, a little bit over time, so I'm gonna have to wrap us up. I just want to say thank you, Dries, Lynne, Matt, Ryan, and Eric, for just a great presentation and a great panel discussion. I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us on this webinar today. As we said in the chat and at the beginning, slides in the recording will be posted to acquia.com and sent via email within the next few days. And in that email, there'll be links to related resources about some of these tools that we've talked about and about some of the questions that maybe you've had. So hopefully you'll find answers to some of those things there. If you have more questions, you can send them to marketing@theacquiateam.com. And then finally, if you're interested in learning more about Drupal 9 in detail and engaging with the Drupal community, please consider joining us at DrupalCon Global, a virtual DrupalCon event that will be July 14th to 17th. And you can find information on events.drupal.org about that event. So thanks again, everyone, and I hope everyone has a great day.